games having DLC have been a standard for a good 10 years or so, and there are a lot of good and bad cases of DLC. And today I will be talking about what I think makes DLC worth it across different genres and with some examples that I played. One of the biggest forms of DLC that has been on my mind recently has to be new characters in fighting games. I do think that the character doesn't have to be the greatest in terms of like moveset and other things like that, but I think they have to be fun and unique enough from the rest of the cast. And something like Smash Bros, I do think they have to be a good showcase of the series it represents and just be a good series to represent Smash. Like for example, we got something like Hero, which I think definitely needed to be in Smash since Dragon Quest is a pretty big JRPG series, and you can think of other characters as pretty good examples to be put in Smash. Of course, then there is also personal enjoyment of said character. Like for example, if you prefer more offensive characters like G or Balrog in Street Fighter V, or something like Joker and Terry in Smash Ultimate. But in some other cases, I feel like it could also bring back a lot of hype for returning characters. Like for example, I recently did see that Street Fighter V was bringing back characters like Rose, Dan, and just a whole bunch of other older characters, and I feel like again that can also be a really good investment, because say if you want to play again those characters in a recent game, then you now have the option to buy them again, because I feel that like maybe the developers at the time didn't really have enough resources to bring it, or maybe they just wanted to focus on new mechanics and stuff like that. And the pricing for DLC characters from what I've seen always ends up being like 5 to 7 Canadian dollars, which for a single character I think is a good price. And usually they do end up coming with a stage and some OST, and I know a lot more modern fighting games do this, like Smash, Rivals of Aether, and then Street Fighter V in some cases, but of course they don't have to. I just find it as a extra bonus because, you know, in most cases it doesn't really increase the price tag, and I do still think that the stages aren't as big as the new characters because it can add a lot more variety to the game, especially because in games like Smash, where how big the stage is can determine how long you can survive. So of course in some games it can just drastically change some matchups, but I still do think that getting new characters in fighting games is pretty worth it, since they add a lot of variety to the game and it can make the game last a whole lot longer, because the more characters you get, the more content it gets, and just the more fun you can have with the game, just experience different characters. Another form of DLC I also do like is adding additional story content to single player games, and this one is also a lot harder to say what makes it worth it, but I do feel that most should actually be reflective of the price tag for the DLC. Like for example, if it's $20, I feel it should be at least 10 to 15 hours on a normal playthrough. One game I do think that does this pretty good has to be Xenoblade 2, where Tournament of the Golden Country is like 30 Canadian, and it gives you like 20 to 25 hours in extra story content, which I also do really like. I do know that's included with the season pass for the game, but you still can buy the Golden Country by itself, and even in that case I still say it's pretty worth it because of, again, you get 20 to 25 hours of extra story content, and it's still pretty good new story content because, you know, you do get a lot of the same stuff from the original game, and even then that's still pretty fun in my opinion. And in case of the season pass, it's still pretty worth it because you get stuff in the main game too, like having challenge matches, having a bunch of new side quests and new characters. And say if it was just the new characters and challenge matches, I would say $30 might be a little bit steep, but the main draw to me has to be the new story mode, which is very worth it in my opinion. So I do feel that this type of DLC is good for single player content because you do get more gameplay and more story content, and that's always good for the game in general. But say if it was just extra challenges and some new side quests, I say that should go for around $10 to $15, because a lot of the rewards you can still get in the base game, but made somewhat harder so you can at least push yourself a little bit more in the game. Kinda same goes with side quests, but in most cases you can get a new character or interact with new characters that you could in the base game, so that makes it a little bit more worth it, but again, not enough to be higher than $15, at least to me. So if companies end up doing this with the single player games, I would feel that it would make those games just really better to experience, especially with the DLC. But now moving on to the last form of DLC I'm going to mention is costume DLC. And to my knowledge, a lot of companies end up doing this with their games, at least the successful ones or the super successful one. This one to me is somewhat less worth it, even though that can end up being really cheap, because this doesn't really add much to the game. It just, changes how characters look. You will not really gain much in the long run unless you really do enjoy costumes. I do think that if those added into the expansion pass of whatever game as a small bonus, that's nice, but it shouldn't be the main draw. Like, for example, Xenoblade 2, it does add in special costumes, but if you get enough in-game currency in the challenge matches, you can actually get costumes. So for something like this, I think that costume DLC can be done a little bit better, at least again if it's tied to like other parts of the game. But as it stands, most costume DLC in my opinion isn't as worth it, just because you're not really getting new content, you're just having the ability to change costumes. I feel in a lot of cases that should have been in the game already, but if you can get this on a sale, or maybe you can just have extra money left over, like say for example if you buy a full game on the digital store and you just so happen to have some extra money left over, maybe you can do it if you really want the extra costume, but again I feel you shouldn't be going out of your way to buy them. And that's mostly what I think is worth it for DLC content, getting new characters in fighting games and getting new story content for a single player game. So for me, games like Street Fighter, Smash, Rivals, Xenoblade, and a whole bunch of other games I've gotten DLC for end up being pretty worth it to me, and are good examples of games I think that do DLC pretty well, because I do end up getting a lot more playtime out of those games. But I want to hear your thoughts on DLC and what some of your favorite DLC is out there, whether it be for a fighting game, for a single player game, or an MMO. Let me know in the comments below, and thank you all for watching, and see you guys later.